Welcome one, welcome all back to the drama-free true crime destination. This is Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. So good to have everybody in the house. Let's get settled in. Let's kick back. We got some true crime to take care of, and I got to shoot from the hip again this week. This time it's all about Courtroom Decorum, and I'll explain why when I get there. Right now, let's get going. We're going to start off with a case that just got underway, the battered and burned retrial. State of Michigan versus Linda Sturmer. A Michigan woman is standing trial for a second time on charges that she beat her husband, set him on fire, and ran him over with their van. Linda Sturmer was initially sentenced to life without parole in 2010, but her conviction was overturned. In 2018, after her attorney successfully argued that she did not receive a fair trial. According to prosecutors, Linda hit Todd Sturmer with an object in his sleep the night of January 7, 2007, before setting the blaze at their Lawrence, Michigan home. Todd managed to run out the front door with his upper body engulfed in flames before Linda allegedly ran him over. According to court documents obtained by Court TV, Todd was determined to have died from a combination of blunt force injuries and thermal injuries. He had sustained 4 lacerations to the scalp and 2 rib fractures before being burned. Investigators concluded that Todd had been run over when they discovered his blood on the van's bumper. At her 2010 trial, Linda was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder and felony murder. However, she maintains she was in the basement doing laundry when the fire broke out. And this is a lot to cover just from day one. Prosecutor Susan Zoidovine opens for the state, vowing to prove that Linda Sturmer killed her husband with premeditation, deliberately set the fire that killed him, then lied to hide her infidelity and cover her tracks. Defense attorney Ronald Kelly conceded the Sturmer's marriage was in trouble, but that the fire that destroyed their family was accidental, and the investigation that followed was spurred by an insurance company looking to scapegoat their client to avoid paying their claim. So basically, all I did was just sum up opening arguments. If I could, let's see. What I can do for you guys is show you everything that went down on day 2 of this trial. So, without further ado, as always, I'm going to jump out the way, and I'm going to let you see this footage here. And yes, I got my copyright notice up, so
Supreme Court case that talks about your gatekeeping role. So okay. I think it's clear from the case that we cited.
Okay. I'll just have counsel be very.
Just know this. I gave you the opening statement from day 1. The trial's going to continue tomorrow. I apologize for that, guys. I didn't notice how long that video would go on for until I started playing it. Oh boy. All right. Our next story involves a Utah nurse killing a patient just to get a hold of the insurance money. Alright, this is out of Highland, Utah. A Utah nurse has been arrested after she allegedly killed a patient in an effort to collect life insurance money. 47-year-old Megan Randall Sunval was arrested and faces charges of murder and obstruction of justice charges. According to court documents obtained by Scripps News Salt Lake City, the investigation started on August 12, 2024, when Lone Peak police officers were called to a home where they found 38-year-old Casey Lynn Terry unresponsive. Terry's uncle, Mark Farnsworth, told officers that he had found her unconscious and struggling to breathe. When Terry was found, she was alone in her bedroom with Sunwall, who is a licensed registered nurse. Sunwall told officers that Terry had been in that condition for a couple of hours and claimed that Terry had a do not resuscitate order and didn't want to go to the hospital. While paramedics were on the scene, they discovered a diabetic needle. Terry, according to investigators, was not a diabetic. When she was transported to Mountain Point Hospital in Lehigh, they found that her blood sugar level was 14. I stop right there because I'm gonna be a little transparent with you guys real quick. I am a type 2 diabetic. I haven't dealt with a lot of spikes and dips in my blood sugar, but I know when a blood sugar level is absolutely dangerous, and 14 is absolutely dangerous on the low end. You do not want to mess with their blood sugar that low. Detectives say any blood sugar level below 40 is considered life-threatening. That is a fact. While Terry was in the ICU, her sister informed doctors that Terry had terminal cancer for 4 to 5 years. However, when Casey's medical history from her primary care physician was reviewed, they found she never had cancer. A later autopsy would confirm she didn't have cancer or major health problems. Terry was declared brain dead by doctors and died on August 15, 2024, about 3 days after the initial 911 call. Investigators say a DNR was never located for Terry, and there was no paperwork designating Sunwall as her power of attorney. When investigators spoke to Terry's family and friends, they shared that they believed Sunwall had been trying to kill Terry for years. Detectives say evidence located on the victim's phone showed a thread of text beginning in December 2019. According to investigators, Sunwall believes she was the beneficiary of Terry's rumored $1.5 million life insurance policy. Over the 4 years of text messages, detectives say Sunwall detailed different ways she would kill herself if she was Terry. Sunwall also allegedly offered to help Terry die and discussed how Terry's death would solve money problems for Sunwall. A forensic pathologist told police the only way for Terry's blood sugar level to drop to 14 is through exogenous insulin. That means the insulin would have had to been administered from outside the body. When a blood glucose monitor found on the scene was reviewed, the stored history showed 19 readings in 10 hours on August 12th. The readings on the monitor would continually drop, and at 4:23 p.m., Sunwall allegedly searched how low the specific monitor would read. Court documents say that the monitor's final 3 readings were marked low, meaning below 19. Police believe Terry at that point was unconscious and unable to test her own blood sugar. Police also found that at 9:47 a.m., the day that Terry was discovered, Sunwall sent Terry a text message. Do you want to take some promethazine when I get there so that you are asleep when this is happening? The medical examiner later confirmed the cause of death for Terry as an overdose of promethazine, probable exogenous insulin, and other drugs. The official manner of death was left undetermined by the office. 5 hours after the morning text from Sunwall to Terry, Sunwall texted her mother saying that she couldn't get Terry to wake up. Despite this, and being a nurse, Sunwall didn't call for medical help until Terry's uncle discovered her 7 hours later. Investigators say that after Terry's death, Sunwall continuously searched for Terry's life insurance policy through calls and emails. During that time, she was also accused of deleting 900 texts from her phone. Now, guys, I've been a caregiver for the better part of 18 years. And if there's a few things you don't mess with, it's a patient's medication, and if a patient is alleged to be a diabetic, their insulin. This woman, this so-called nurse, is what we call a monster. She should never be around another patient like this again. If she's all this for over money, that is something you just don't do. That is something you just don't do. I hope she gets the book thrown at her. Just for that. Next up, the parents of Riley Strain is going to file a lawsuit against his fraternity. A year later, the parents of a missing college student found dead in Nashville have filed a lawsuit against a college fraternity. 22-year-old Riley Strain was a University of Missouri senior who disappeared after a night out with friends in downtown Nashville on March 8, 2024, just last year. His parents have filed a lawsuit against his fraternity, Delta Chi. Strain was visiting Nashville over spring break when he became separated from his group. After an extensive search, his body was found in the Cumberland River weeks later. His parents say the fraternity neglected to protect him during the trip and didn't implement adequate safety measures. This video I can and will actually show you. We're going to take you to coverage courtesy of the original True Crime Obsession, Court TV.
Now, for what's tipping the scales, the family of a college student who vanished and later was found dead during a trip to Nashville is now suing his fraternity over his death. Riley Strain attended the University of Missouri and traveled to Nashville last March with his Delta Chi brothers. On the evening of March the 8th, Strain was kicked out of Luke Bryan's bar for being too drunk. Security cameras caught him walking away, but then he disappeared. His family was desperate to find him.
It's just as hard on them as it is on us.
And right now, we really are focusing on
bringing Riley home.
his last point.
He's my best friend. He's everything.
Strain was found dead 2 weeks later in the Cumberland River. According to the medical examiner, his manner of death was drowning and intoxication. or that was the cause of death, rather. The manner was accidental. Now, his family claims his death was a result of the carelessness and the negligence of the fraternity. So was Riley Strain's fraternity responsible in this case? I mean, these brothers are being sued and named as defendants. Is it right? Let's talk about it. I want to bring back in attorney Tommy Pope and private investigator Manuel Gomez. Okay, Tommy, do you think the family has a strong case here?
The first thing I did when we talked about it was I wanted to look and see whether Tennessee or even Missouri, according to whether the acts would have taken place, was contributory negligence versus comparative. For your viewers, if it was contributory negligence, in many places, 1% wrongdoing on my part prevents me from being successful in suit. But it appears both places are some type of comparative. So the question's then going to become, you know, he's of age, I assume, that, you know, did he choose to do these things? And as long as there was other responsibilities, again, it's tough. You know, I was reading something where they were saying he wasn't even wanting to go on the trip, and they kind of cajoled him to going. It's going to be interesting, and I think it's going to be extremely fact-based, whether there's anything that can ultimately stick or gets beyond a summary judgment, which is kind of like the direct verdict in our civil courts.
Right, Tommy. Yeah, appreciate those points. I know. I was somewhat surprised at this. You know, I know we thought, oh, there's a possibility they may try to sue someone. But naming brothers, the officers in the fraternity, these are his dear friends. He's also a 22-year-old. So there's that, you know, to your point about at what point is there some personal responsibility? I mean, I think everyone is so sorry that that happened to him. Nobody wanted to see him drown, and nobody wanted to see this family go through losing a child. But also, where's the line between, you know, your own free will, you know, and other people's actions around you? Manuel Gomez, I certainly want you to weigh in. As we know, many people at first thought this was a homicide. Somebody wanted to do this young man harm, and then it turns out he was just very drunk, sadly, and fell because of the steep grade in the river. And for anybody who's been in that area in Nashville, you know it's close to Broadway where those bars are. Your thoughts, please.
Well, Julie, I commend the family for filing the civil lawsuit against the fraternity, because unfortunately, this happens to our fraternities around the United States, where alcohol, mass amounts of alcohol is introduced through numerous parties and all these fraternities. And this is something that happens all the time. Unfortunately, I hope that this case of this young man is an example for all the fraternities out there to follow, that they need to have accountability. I mean, that's the whole point of being in a fraternity, brotherhood. This shows there was no brotherhood. Nobody escorted him. Julie, when you see him coming down the staircase, it's a miracle this guy was able to make it to the bottom of the staircase. He's literally stumbling when he's walking. There was no brotherhood, and I do feel that this fraternity should be accountable because they were pushing the alcohol. Granted, he's 22 years of age, but you know what? We need to set an example nationwide. This is not acceptable.
Manuel, thank you for saying that. Yeah, it does make them an example, right? You know, it does. Is there another way to go about it? Tommy Pope, I don't know if you can still hear me. Is your audio good? I hope. Okay, perfect. Just double checking. You know, so would there be a better way to go about this, making policy changes for the fraternity rather than naming these young men as defendants in the civil action?
You know, and ironically, you know, oftentimes when you file a civil suit, you're throwing as big a net as possible. You know, we talked in one of the last segments about respondeat superior, looking at you know, who may be above that would have quite candidly, a deeper pocket. Because in civil, really financial is the only thing you recover. And so to me, it seems and again, maybe they did it just to throw the big net, but naming individual members versus maybe the entity, kind of back to a failure to train, failure to follow the rules. I think that they probably cast too broad a net in this particular circumstance.
Tommy, thank you for that. Manuel, tell me, how do you see this playing out?
Well, I agree with Tommy. I don't think that the brothers will be held accountable, but I do think the fraternity will be. And there's no doubt in my mind on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, maybe the national office, wherever they're located, I believe it's Delta Chi, I believe is the fraternity. I guess we'll see what happens. We've got to leave it there for time's sake. We love having you both on this program. Manuel Gomez with Black Ops private investigators and attorney Tommy Pope and lawmaker as well. Thank you both so much for your time and your great expertise. We'll see you soon.
And my thanks to Manuel Gomez, Tommy Pope, and Court TV anchor of opening statements, Julie Grant, for that coverage. As far as my opinion, as far as whether the Riley Strain's parents should file a lawsuit against a fraternity, maybe, but not. But I'm starting to think like those two guests, not necessarily against the brothers in that fraternity, but the fraternity itself. Because there's so much that could have been done to prevent Riley Strain from passing away. If they had something more like something like a buddy system in place, then that could have been that this thing could have never been a report, and we probably wouldn't be talking about this today. Next up, Gary Busey. Gary Busey is back in court on sexual contact charges. You talk about a guy who weaves in his conversations. This guy is notorious for it too. Actor Gary Busey was back in court on charges of fourth-degree criminal sexual contact, attempted criminal sexual contact, and harassment. Busey is accused of inappropriately touching at least 3 women at a horror movie convention in August of 2022. The charges stem from alleged actions taken August 12th through 14th at the Monster Mania convention at the Doubletree Hotel in the southern Jersey town of Jersey, a suburb of Philadelphia. Busey appeared remotely from California. Blair Zwillman, who told the judge he took over Busey's case last week, entered a not guilty plea for him. A plea offer was mentioned during the hearing. However, Zwillman told the judge he is working on a motion to dismiss based partly on exculpatory affidavits he received from prior defense counsel. The defense filed a pretrial intervention application, but no other details were given. Busey is widely known as a character actor, largely in supporting roles, though he came to attention and was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor playing the title role in the 1978 film The Buddy Holly Story. And now, more coverage from Court TV.
This morning, we've got our cameras in a New Jersey courtroom as we're getting ready for actor Gary Busey to be arraigned this morning. He's being accused of groping women inappropriately at a movie convention back in the year 2022. Here's a live look at the courtroom, and this hearing is going to be conducted via Zoom, as we understand it. So you can see on the left there at the top, that's the live shot of the courtroom, and then you can see, it looks like 2 of the attorneys appearing from their respective offices. And Gary Busey will be appearing, we are told, via Zoom, because he lives in California. This was at the Monster Mania convention at the Doubletree Hotel back in August of 2022 that these alleged incidents were said to have occurred. Gary Busey denies these allegations, says that they are unequivocally false. He's pleaded not guilty. He is proceeding through the system with this case. And something interesting you should be aware of, if you missed opening statements this morning, our last guest talked with us about how in New Jersey they have a pre-trial intervention program that would be available at the outset to someone like Gary Busey, for instance, who doesn't have a past criminal history, who's presumably a first-time offender, and the charges are low-level charges. It's an opportunity for people to redeem themselves and not incur a record. Here's Her Honor. Let's listen.
Your client is here. Let's let his client in, please.
He is, Judge. He's got to put his video on.
Okay, good morning. It's the matter of State versus Busey. The matters for arraignment under indictment 3380225. The state your appearance, please.
Good morning, Your Honor. Assistant Prosecutor Keith Carmi for the state.
Good morning, Your Honor. Blair Arswell in Morristown, New Jersey, on behalf of Mr. Busey, who appears remotely from California, with the court's permission.
Okay. Yes. In reference to the arraignment, I'll hear you, counsel.
Judge, we acknowledge receiving a copy of the indictment, ask the court to enter a not guilty plea. I've explained the PTI possibility to Mr. Busey, and we actually electronically filed a PTI application yesterday.
Okay, so you have applied him for PTI, is that it?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, the court is in receipt of the case disposition conference order. A plea offer has been entered in this matter. Mr. Prosecutor, you have this listed as a probationary offer. Would this include Megan's parole supervision for life or no?
No, Your Honor. It's a 4th-degree charge, criminal sexual contact. Victims were adults. There's no Megan's Law or PSL.
No PSL or Megan's Law. Well, it's the charge itself is what makes it not fall under that statute. Is that what it is?
It's the charge and the age of the victims.
Not so sure. But in any event, discovery, you have all discovery, counsel?
Judge,
Defense?
I received it from prior counsel. I just got involved in the case, as Your Honor may know, about a week ago. But Mr. Carmi has agreed to give me access to the portal, too. So at this point, I believe I have everything I need, but I'll double check.
Well, this is my question. You're listed as the attorney so that the state can move the discovery over to you for you can have full access to it?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, Mr. Carmi, you'll make sure that that's done today, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
In reference to this matter, because you are applying to PTI, well, let's say 421 because you're applying to you have applied to PTI. You should hear something by 421.
Right.
All discovery shall be complete by 421. In reference to motions, counsel, you have listed, you plan to move forward a dismissal of the charge. I see you're talking about
We've got our cameras in.
in reference to motions, counsel, you have listed, you plan to move forward a dismissal of the charge. I see you're talking about the transcript? What's happening here?
Well, the grand jury transcript I don't have yet. I'm going to promptly order that. And just one issue that pops up that Mr. Carmi may or may not be aware of. I think he's new to the case too, judges. There was some, I believe, prior counsel has supplied some exculpatory affidavits. I don't know if they were presented to the grand jury or not, and if they were, I don't know if that's going to amount to a viable claim, but I certainly have the duty of looking into it. And other deficiency. I'm sorry.
Have you, counsel, ordered that grand jury transcript yet?
Judge, I'm not as familiar with Camden County procedures, although I appeared before Your Honor about 6 years ago. But
no, I recall you, and that's why I'm asking if you had applied him. You've ordered that grand jury transcript. Let's say have any motion you file, have your notice of motion filed by 4/21. Your notice of motion.
That's fine, Judge.
The concerns of Nunez, Valdez, Recovery Court, you discussed those with your client?
I did.
Okay, the next court appearance in this matter will be for April 21st. Okay, Mr. Boosie, you are receiving notice via Zoom. It's just like receiving a signed notice for my court. Your court date, sir, is 4/21. What date did I say, sir?
What? 4/21. The date. She asked you the date of the next court appearance. 4/20.
Is a hearing.
April 21st.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. And I would like to, for the attorneys, my staff is going to reach out to you to set up a telephone conference before 4/21 so we can see where we are with this case and what's happening with the discovery and what your thoughts are. Okay?
Very well. Thank you, Judge.
All right. So ordered. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for accommodating us, Judge. Have a good one.
Absolutely. So long.
And there we have it. Did I tell you this morning it would be a brief hearing, but an important hearing because we're getting an idea of what direction this case is going to go. So I want to unpack this now. It seems to me it could go two directions. Could be dismissed outright, depending upon what's in these exculpatory affidavits you heard Gary Busey's attorney referencing. Or he could go into that pre-trial intervention program that attorney Mario Gallucci was telling us about on opening statements. They have these types of programs typically in every state. In Jersey, it's called PTI, where somebody who doesn't have a criminal history and who's facing a low-level offense like these are the lowest level of sex assault charges on the books in New Jersey. They can go through a program, comply with whatever conditions are set out for them. Sometimes it's classes, sometimes probation, things like that. And then once they've completed all of the requisite things, then they get an expungement and the record's sealed and there is no conviction in the end. So that is a great program for anybody who's a first-time offender facing something very low level. And you heard his attorney say we just applied for PTI yesterday electronically, but he's going to try to get the case kicked entirely first.
And we will see if that case gets kicked entirely. Lisa, stay tuned. We will find out when I get that information. I'll bring it right here. Bethea'S Byte Reloaded, either in a text post on the community tab, or breaking news in a video. Let's see what we got next on the docket. We just kicked off another trial. The surgeon strangles wife trial, Massachusetts versus Dr. Ingolf Twerk. Yes, that's his name. I'll break the whole thing down in just a second. All right. Here's what's going on. A Massachusetts doctor accused of killing his wife is facing life in prison if he's convicted at trial. 63-year-old Dr. Ingolf Twerk is accused of strangling 45-year-old Catherine McLean to death in their Dover home in May 2020 and dumping her body in a nearby pond. Twerk's defense has argued in court documents that McLean died during a drunken fight between the two over their relationship. The couple had recently dropped efforts to divorce each other, according to defense filings, and were attempting to reconcile after a tumultuous period that included McLean reporting Twerk to police for physical abuse and Twerk's suspicions that McLean was cheating on him. Twerk was a urologist at St. Elizabeth's Medical Center in Boston until he was terminated over the accusations of fraudulent billing to Medicaid. That's according to the Associated Press. McLean ran Birch Tree Energy and Healing, an alternative healing service, excuse me. Alright, let's see what we can... Alright, now this video I know I can play for you, so we're gonna go there now.
Kurt, I am sorry, brother, but she is a vindictive devil. I am really sorry, brother, but she manipulated us all. Love you, Harry. That's the text message that Kurt Pfannenstiel received when he woke up in the early morning hours of Friday, May 15th, 2020. Immediately distressed, Kurt contacted another friend of Katie and Harry, the defendant goes by Harry as well as Ingolf, and shared the text message with her. Vanessa Pettigrew was also concerned, so she drove to Katie's home at 29 Valley Road in Dover to look for Katie. She called, she texted, no Katie. Vanessa knew that there was a court order that prohibited Dr. Turek from living at 29 Valley Road, and so that he was staying in a hotel. So she found a hotel in Dedham, and she drove there. She found the two cars that the defendant and Katie shared parked outside. No Katie. She contacted family. She contacted friends. And I expect you'll hear that Stephen Rocca, who is Katie's ex-husband and the father of her 3 children, contacted the hotel. The hotel called the Dedham police and asked them to do a well-being check. And when the Dedham police responded to the hotel, no Katie, but they found the defendant totally unresponsive, passed out in his bed. He had scratches on his body. There was knives. There was a liquor bottle. And he was transported to Norwood Hospital, where he remained unresponsive for many hours. So family and friends continued to search. Law enforcement searched in Dedham, Dover, Medfield. Her phone was pinged, and it covered a wide area. So law enforcement was searching in the woods with dogs. No Katie. There was concern that she could be injured in those woods. All day Friday, no Katie. On Saturday, the police learned that Dr. Turek had woken up, and they wanted to speak with him. You will hear from personnel at Norwood Hospital and from the police about the procedures that needed to be followed, in part because of COVID, because this was during the height of the pandemic, and things were more complicated. So it wasn't until after 5 o'clock on Saturday that the police were able to meet with Dr. Turek. And I expect that you will hear about the meeting that they had. That interview was recorded. It was an audio recording. I want to tell you that it is a little bit challenging to hear because in part everyone was wearing masks. But we will have a transcript that will help you and you will be able to listen to the interview. It's about 3 hours. And I expect that you will hear that Trooper Jeffrey Kotkowski and Detective Deborah Gonski from the Dedham Police met with Dr. Turek in the family waiting room at Norwood Hospital. That he agreed to speak with them, he was provided with his Miranda warnings. The interview was hours, but the police were polite, they were respectful, there was no yelling, and they gave him plenty of time to talk. And in the beginning of that interview, the defendant said he didn't know what happened. He didn't know where Katie was. And the police said, we're concerned, we need to find her. We think she might be in the woods. What can you tell us? And eventually, as they talked more, he told them about what happened, about what he did, about the circumstances at 29 Valley Road. He explained that he and Katie had been having some marital problems when they had separated. He told the police that she needlessly got a restraining order that meant that he had to leave 29 Valley Road. And so he bounced around and he was having a hard time finding a place to stay, that he ended up in Florida. But that he and Katie had agreed to reconcile. He came back from Florida, and they were going to work things out. And it was supposed to be a clean slate, nothing from the past. And on Thursday, they had a nice day at 29 Valley Road. They had a nice dinner, all 3 kids were home, they played a game. And then after dinner, after some drinking, there was an argument. And Katie wouldn't let it go. She wouldn't let the past go, like she had agreed. And so he put his hands around her neck. And just as the police were going to ask what happened after he put his hands around her neck, Dr. Turek asked for a break. And I expect you will hear that Trooper Kotkowski will say, yep, that's not a problem. We can do that. And so they took almost a 45-minute break. And when Dr. Turek came back, it was different. His tone was different, more resolute, and he almost immediately provided a lot of information. Something else had changed. Detective Gonski had left the room, and Detective Richard Porro was in the room. And Dr. Turek told 2 male police officers that he strangled his wife, that he knew he killed her, that he panicked after he knew she was dead, and he carried her body out of the house. And the police said, we need to know where she is. We can't leave her out there. And so he told the police directions for how to find her. In the course of this trial, you will hear a lot of information and evidence about the investigation that was conducted before Dr. Turek told the police that he strangled his wife and after. You will hear from the police who followed the directions, who went to the pond at 1 Francis Street in the night, in the dark, and who recovered Katie McLean's body from that swampy water, dressed only in leggings, covered in dirt and debris. You will hear about her shirt recovered on a branch outside the pond. You will hear about 2 large rocks recovered from inside her pants. you will have a chance to see how heavy they are. The rocks that were meant to hide her, to cover up what he had done. And in the course of this trial, you will hear from the medical examiner who examined Katie McLean's body, who conducted an autopsy, and about her findings of strangulation, of head injury, and from a DNA analyst about the DNA that was found under Katie's fingernails. And in the course of this trial, you will also hear evidence about the defendant's anger towards Katie McLean. Evidence of Kurt. You will hear about her shirt recovered on a branch outside the pond. You will hear about 2 large rocks recovered from inside her pants. You will have a chance to see how heavy they are. The rocks that were meant to hide her, to cover up what he had done. And in the course of the trial, you will hear from the medical examiner who examined Katie McLean's body, who conducted an autopsy, and about her findings of strangulation, of head injury, and from a DNA analyst about the DNA that was found under Katie's fingernails. And in the course of this trial, you will also hear evidence about the defendant's anger towards Katie McLean. Evidence of anger that will prove that he is guilty of first-degree murder. And at the end of this trial, we will return and we will ask you to consider all of the evidence and the law and find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Mr. Reddington?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Thank you. Jurors, a couple of things that you have to understand, and his Honor is the umpire in the case. He calls the balls, he calls the strikes, he allows objections, excludes things, allows things. What I say is not evidence, what the DAs say is not evidence, what's evidence, and what you people determine the facts of this case to be, consistent with your life experience, which is determine the facts of this case to be, consistent with your life experience, which is to this trial, your life experience dealing with your friends, dealing with work, inferences that you can draw from evidence that you determine to be the facts. And as jurors, coming from all walks of life, you bring together that life experience and the ability to discuss, once the case is over, the evidence that has been presented to determine whether or not the government has proven the case beyond a reasonable doubt as His Honor instructed you what that definition of beyond a reasonable doubt means, and the high burden that is set on the government to say to a jury, this is not close, this is not more probable than not, this is not more likely than, it's beyond reasonable doubt. And the only one that determines who is going to get charged with a crime in our society is the government. And when the government determines that they're going to charge somebody with a crime, they don't call you up and say, hey, we're thinking we're going to charge you with a crime. Do you have any input on that determination? They arrest you, and they determine, we're going to charge the person. I suggest to you that the highest crime that is possible that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, first-degree murder. At the end of the trial, His Honor will tell you what the law is, and he'll explain to you that there are two theories, I suspect, of murder in the first degree: premeditated, malice aforethought, cruelty and atrocity. He'll tell you about the factors that one can consider to determine whether or not an individual has killed another human being with cruelty and atrocity with the intent to kill and taking pleasure in the death of that person. His Honor will tell you about what's called second-degree murder. His Honor may tell you about what's called voluntary manslaughter, perhaps maybe even involuntary manslaughter. That depends on the evidence that goes in to this trial, and that's entirely up to the judge. And giving you the law is entirely up to the judge, not me. At the end of the case, you're going to be able to have his instructions, and then you take the facts that you determine to exist, and you going to charge somebody with a crime, they don't call you up and say, hey, we're thinking we're going to charge you with a crime. Do you have any input on that determination? They arrest you, and they determine, we're going to charge the person. I suggest to you that the highest crime that is possible that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, first-degree murder. At the end of the trial, His Honor will tell you what the law is, and he'll explain to you that there are two theories, I suspect, of murder in the first degree: premeditated, malice aforethought, cruelty and atrocity. He'll tell you about the factors that one can consider to determine whether or not an individual has killed another human being with cruelty and atrocity with the intent to kill and taking pleasure in the death of that person. His Honor will tell you about what's called second-degree murder. His Honor may tell you about what's called voluntary manslaughter, perhaps maybe even involuntary manslaughter. That depends on the evidence that goes in to this trial, and that's entirely up to the judge. And giving you the law is entirely up to the judge, not me. At the end of the case, you're going to be able to have his instructions, and then you take the facts that you determine to exist, and you match it up to the law, and you make a decision as to whether or not the government, not the defendant, the government has proven guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and if so, to what degree? How do you do that? Well, you come in here, you may say, I'm not really capable of determining credibility. Well, yeah, you do it every day. And you bring that life experience into the jury room. And you factor that in. When you weigh the testimony of a witness, and you notice the witness stand is right in. It's right next to you. And the reason it's right next to you is so that you as a jury are able to observe the demeanor of the witness, consider whether or not the witness, to your determination, is a dog in the fight, as I say. Are they gilding the lily? Are they adding anything? Are they trying to portray something because they have a reason to want to portray something? That's all up to you. Credibility determinations are left to the jury. So what do we have here? You have a man who's on trial for murder. Harry Sheridan, and by the way, he's a doctor, he was a doctor, he is a doctor. He don't like to go by the term doctor. He was always Harry. You're going to hear evidence that he was always Harry, that he was a gentleman who was a urologist, dealt with kidneys, dealt with prostate, and was a surgeon. You're going to hear evidence that Harry was born in East Germany, and as a kid he grew up in East Germany. Went to the East German schools. When he graduated from high school, he went into the East German Air Force. Served in the East German Air Force for a number of years, got out, went to med school after he graduated from college. Became an accomplished physician, an accomplished surgeon. The wall came down, he was able to leave East Germany, and he, like a bat out of hell, got out of East Germany and came over to the United States. When he came over to the United States at the age of 42, he learned English. Didn't know English. You'll hear him testify. He's going to testify in this case. Sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But he knows English, and he speaks very, very good English. Self-taught. In the United States, he became not just an accomplished surgeon, but he was one of, if not the best, as far as reputation, worldwide for robotic prostate surgery. Those hands saved hundreds of lives and took one. He knows it. Every day, he wakes up, you'll hear evidence that he thinks of Katie. Nobody's happy with something like that. You'll live with it. But as human beings, and His Honor, I suspect, will instruct you that you look to the circumstances that surround the taking of a life. What was involved? What happened? Like if somebody's acting to protect themselves, or if somebody's acting out of hot blood, heat of passion, or if it's an accident even in certain cases. So when Harry comes over here to the United States, and he ended up meeting Catherine McLean on Bumble, one of those websites. Nothing good ever comes from Bumble or Twitter or whatever those things are that you go on, your dating websites, and nothing wrong with that. You meet people, hopefully you meet the right one, maybe, or you have fun. So you're going to hear evidence that both Katie and Harry went on this dating website. He's living by himself. He's living life large. She's been married twice before. No judgment there. He was married twice before. So now he's living in Dover. And as he's living in Dover, and by the way, you're going to see a timeline. And here's the timeline that I think is somewhat relevant. We're going to see that in November of 17, Harry and Kathleen meet online. Like most of us, they date, they have fun, they end up feeling that they have feelings for each other. March of 18, 4 months later. 4 months later, she moves into his house. His house, you heard the government indicate her house. Well, it's her house now. It was her house. You'll hear evidence of that. So the house was in Dover, Massachusetts. You're going to hear evidence that Harry had occasion to work on that house. It was a very nice house. Here's the house in Dover. Here's a photograph of the backyard that he worked on, the pool, the cabana, the waterfall, outside TV. You're going to see evidence of the interior of the house. Beautiful home, downstairs, huge exercise gym, huge movie theater with the movie you can watch, office space. Because in March of 18, I guess later, Bethany McLean and her 3 children, with Dad, Steve Roca, her 3 children moved into the house, and they're living together. He's working, he's going to Boston. And as I say, he wasn't really, he didn't like to be Dr. Church, he didn't like to be referred to in any type of appellations. What he preferred was his lifestyle, which involved his Harley Davidson ×2. He was lucky that they had 2 Harleys. And what he used to do is he used to go and do his surgery, and he never was one to want to wear, the guard with the rounding on the head and all that. He hated that stuff. He wasn't Dr. Turk, he was Harry. Everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. He would walk into work, and that was his attire. Harley Davidson had it underneath the surgical, didn't have Harley Davidson shirt. He became a such review of St. E's in Elizabeth. They were owned by that medical corporation. I think all the hospitals crashed. In any event, he was the chief of urology. And he was such a star that there were globals over the expressway in Boston. This is the guy living by himself. There was 2 motorcycles, his beautiful house. In December of 19, March of 18, December of 19, he got married. He had a exposition that he had to do in Las Vegas. So they went to Las Vegas. He took her. They had a good time. He's in Las Vegas, and they were both intoxicated. They ended up going through the fast lane, the drive-through weddings. They ended up being able to an ad to sit inside the pink Elvis Cadillac. The drive-through in December of 19. January of 20. January of 20. Karen meets with a divorce lawyer. A woman here from Denver. Here Elizabeth. Wants a divorce. Doesn't want to be with Kathleen McLean after the 5 months or so. Doesn't want to be married. She sends him an email. She says at the end of the month, thank you for the retainer, the money that you paid her, to divorce Kathleen McLean. You can hear evidence of Kathleen McLean constantly went on his cell phone, constantly looking for whether or not he's on Bumble and Jumble or whatever it is, or whether or not he's flirting, or whether or not he's sexting, or whether or not he's having affairs, whether or not he's cheating. There's a huge portion of it. 2 days after, the letter was written by the attorney confirming the divorce retainer had been received. It was going to be a divorce. She went to court. She got a restraining order against him. Threw him out of his own home, ordered by the court because she got a restraining order. Then she filed for divorce. So now at this point, he's in a situation where he's out. Where's he going to go? He calls a friend, Charlie Lax. Charlie's a nice guy, lets him stay at his house for a period of time, but how are you going to be able to do that? So Charlie has him leave. He gets evidence that after he left Charlie Lax's house, he ended up going, his counsel kind of blithely says, well, he went off to Florida. He didn't just go off to Florida. He had nowhere to live, literally. He ended up almost homeless. The time came to remember that horrific time when the pandemic struck all of us. It was an international event. He was in Germany prior to that because he had a job. His life was changing. He was going to Germany. He was going to be a physician in Germany. He already had a job with a university. His life was on a much better track. You're going to hear evidence that there's discussion about, well, you know, the Roca kids, they like Dover, they like the schools, they like the programs. Katie didn't want to move the kids. He didn't care. Fine. Sell the house, sell the house in June. When the kids are done in school, he didn't care. He was out of there. She knew it. As the pandemic got worse, at his age, being a physician, obviously, all of us, I suppose, at that point were concerned, he was worried about dying. That unusual thing that he was worried about at the height of that pandemic, and the fear that took him by overwhelming emotion. He ended up consulting his doctor, had medication, and again, had nowhere to go. We're knocking on the door, we'll say to a friend, can I stay with you? They'd be like, dude, I'm sorry. No, this is stuff going on. You're going to hear evidence from one of the government's witnesses who was a friend for a long time of Katie McLean, in 2015, I believe. Vanessa Decorum. Talked to her every day. There were 12,000 pages of texts. They sent back and forth to each other every day, talking about what's going on in their life, talking about, you know, whether or not they put their fingernail polish, what their dresses, this trashy, does this look good, I think it looks nice, and by the way, let's go to dinner, we're going to drink, you okay, how's the whole problem? On and on and on. He's reaching out to his best friend, Kurt Fantasy. He says, can I stay with you? You're going to see, because he texted a text that he received from Harry to the best friend. So you've got the plane, the two planes rolling around. Kurt! So Harry reaches out to Kurt and says, please, can I stay with you? I need safety. I have to stay somewhere to be safe. Chris is not, I don't think so, I can't do that. He sent that to Lester, and the two of them said, it's too bad. He had a lawyer, good lawyer, real good guy. John Hoffman was representing him. John was dealing with her lawyer, and John would send, you'll see the emails, he'd send letters in the course of the negotiations. Can he please stay in the basement? His house. Can he stay in the basement? Put a lock on the door. And you'll see text between Kate McLean and Vanessa about Harry wants to stay in the basement, LOL. Harry wants to stay in the basement. He's not her house, his house. But he now has to find a place to stay. Stays in Boston, one little bedroom with a friend. And the friend board of trustees, you hear evidence, wanted him out because of the pandemic. He went to Florida. In Florida, he stayed in a rusty, nasty trailer that a friend Bob Ian let him stay in until Bob sold the trailer. In the interim, there were negotiations about reconciliation. And the negotiations basically were pretty simple. McLean, who I submit you're going to hear, had a little house in Sudbury with a flooded basement and a lot of problems to it, but a $400,000 house that was underwater, that was being foreclosed on, that ultimately gets sold pre-foreclosure. Now she's living in that house in Dover. So she wanted on the deed. She wanted on the deed, she wanted a post up. She wanted him to sign something that would give her half ownership in the property, and that's where David Kuyten comes in. David Kuyten, you'll hear from Zoom, was an attorney and a friend of Kate McLean's, and he talked every day, as many of her friends wanted to do, would talk sexting to her. At one point, getting somewhat descriptive about various sex acts and talking about the property. And he prepares the deed and she records the deed. He records the deed and she says, by the way, if he dies, do I get everything? So as time goes by, in the interest of reconciliation, he signs the deed. Signs it, puts her on the property. She owns half that property. Look at the date. 29th of April, 2020. Signed a post-op agreement, giving her $100,000, paying lawyers' fees. You can see text messages between Vanessa, his best friend Kurt. You're going to see text messages with Kurt. And while Kurt was talking to him about trying to mediate between Katie McLean and Harry and trying to get things to work out, that he was sexting her, and she responded. Ultimately, he's sending her what's referred to in the vernacular as dick pics, and she's sending him pictures of her breasts while she's in a bathtub. This guy's going to be right up here on that witness stand. Can't wait. That's his best friend, Kurt. So time goes by. Harry now comes back to Massachusetts. Has nerve problems and we saw Roca, by the way, was pursuing my brother with Katie. Ends up together the two of them, pick up Harry, bring him to Denver. Stays in the hotel. While he's in the hotel, Katie is with him getting water, food, things of that nature. Has a restraining order. It says, don't worry about the restraining order. Come on back home, because he signed a deed. Come on back home, we're going to be eliminated. She files documents with an attorney. You're going to hear from Mike Thaler, who's an attorney here in Dedham, filing dismissing restraining orders. Life is good. Harry's going to come back home. He had a nice night. He was talking about working with the kids. They're drinking. They're having martinis. And they have whiskey. And they have an argument. And they go upstairs to the bedroom. That's where they go upstairs, and the DA says that he, with his anger, decided that he was going to murder her. Well, that's a good life choice, huh? No, it actually happened, and you see the evidence is pretty clear. So what happens is they're in the bed, and they're arguing. And she's talking about the other men. She's got hundreds of guys after her on these websites. And do you think I really love you? Do you think I really love you? I'm calling the police tomorrow. You're getting out of here. They got in the course of an argument. She had a rocks glass in her hand. She had her cell phone in the other hand. He got on his knees. He said, Katie, please don't. She smashed the rocks glass off his head, the right side of his head, not the left side like the police think. At that point, with one hand, the size of that hand, the strength of that hand, he grabbed her, set the highway, she died. You're going to hear evidence from Dr. Laposada, pathologist from Rhode Island. Dr. Laposada will tell you. And a lot of the, what appears to be in any of these pictures that His Honor asked you about, can you handle looking at these pictures that are not pleasant? There's twigs and leaves and stuff on the pond. There's what appears to be bluish skin on the face. A lot of that is from lying face down in the pond, in the pooling of blood, post-mortem. You're going to hear evidence that death was within seconds. He panics, doesn't know what to do. This is post-homicide conduct. The deed is done. What's for you to determine is, can the government show you and prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that this was not killing in hot blood, heat of passion, as opposed to premeditated malice of forethought and cruelty and atrocity. Putting someone in a pond, this is called fright or flight. Bad move. Should have called 911. Nevertheless, it was a panicked move. You can see when he was in the hospital, you can see that he was passed out. He had a 226 blood alcohol level. Mr. Attorney will talk to you about his statements to the police in the course of that questioning, almost as if, you know, he's writing a presidential speech and has all of his wits about it. This is what he looked like when the police first went into the hospital. That's what he looked like. He was passed out. He was coming out of it. Medication, significantly intoxicated. Medical records indicating that the doctors know it was attempted suicide by alcohol poisoning. The course of talking to the police, again, the audio. You're going to see, I submit to you, that he was confused with a lot of questions. But nevertheless, was trying to be a gentleman, was trying to be cooperative. Police officers noticed his wrist. He tried to kill himself in a state of despondency. Total misery. That, members of the jury, is the evidence that will be presented to you, and ultimately at the end of the case, it's up to you to determine whether or not the government has proven this case to what degree, if any, beyond a reasonable doubt. And you heard the magistrate, Margaret, indicate to you that you as a jury pass between the defendant. Even though we call people that are charged with a crime a defendant, prison is honest said, doesn't have to defend against anything. The government's burden of proof, but nevertheless, you as a jury pass between the defendant in the Commonwealth, the DA's office, the police, crime labs, all the rest of it. You pass between the government and the defendant who has placed himself on his country, which country you are. And that she then went on and said, and you are charged with hearing the evidence on your oath that you took as jurors. You know, we are confident and appreciate, because it is a service, when jurors come and you take time out of your lives, knowing that that protects all of us. We have a right to go before a jury of our peers to determine whether or not the government has proven a case beyond a reasonable doubt. At the end of the case, you get a chance to give you a closing argument. Again, what I say is evidence. What the DA says is not evidence. What's evidence is what you hear from here, photographs, exhibits, things of that nature. Thank you.
And that was the opening statements in the Sergeant Strangler's wife murder trial. And we just had the first 2 days of testimony. The trial will continue tomorrow. Next up, the inmate who attacked Scott Peterson will tell his side of the story. The inmate who got into a brawl with Scott Peterson earlier this month has spoken with Court TV. In a phone interview with Vinnie Politan, Charles Miles told his side of the story, clearing up a few misconceptions along the way. For starters, the altercation was not about pickleball. According to Miles, Peterson was playing pickleball at the time of the scuffle, but Miles was not. When he and his cellmate walked by Peterson as he was playing, Miles said his cellmate blurted out, "Hey, there's the baby killer." 52-year-old Scott Peterson is serving life without parole for the December 2002 murders of his pregnant wife Lacey and the couple's unborn son Connor. According to Miles, age 39, on the afternoon of March 9th, Peterson began to run toward him aggressively. At first, Miles thought Peterson was wielding a weapon, which turned out to be a pickleball paddle. Peterson was trying to get the ball, but Miles thought they were going to crash, so he went into attack mode and just started swinging at him. Miles insisted, however, that Peterson made the first contact. Miles said he attacked Peterson because he was invading his personal space. The two struggled, but Miles said he eventually overpowered Peterson. Quote, "I beat the hell out of him. I beat him down to the ground," end quote. Corrections officers stepped in, and Miles said, and broke up the fight with chemical agents. Miles and Peterson were then placed in a row of cells referred to as cages, just 2 cells away from one another. The other cages were empty. So the 2 inmates eventually began chatting and ended up speaking for 2 hours. Miles wound up confiding in Peterson that he was trying to improve himself, and a primal urge came out because he feels the need to protect women and children. Miles, an admitted gang member who is doing time for murder, explained that unofficial rules among general population dictate that certain crimes are particularly abhorrent. Miles confessed that he has a history of beating up child molesters, child killers, and basically anyone who brings harm to women and children. Peterson, for the record, has never been accused of child molestation. According to Miles, Peterson still maintains his innocence and insists that he did not kill Lacey and Connor. Miles dropped the subject partly because Peterson has a wealthy family, so he has all the money in the world here. This apparently gives him a certain level of power, and Miles doesn't want to lose any of his privileges. When they were sent back to the general population, the two men shook hands. Since then, there have been no problems between them. Upon reflection, Miles told Politan that he believes the incident with Peterson was God's plan. He said that the night before the attack, he felt the need to pray to God for the many wrongs I've done, quote unquote. Miles asked God to send him a sign and doesn't think it's a coincidence that he and Peterson crossed paths the next day. Politan encouraged Miles to keep the peace, saying, "You don't want to penalize your life because of what someone did in their life." Miles reassured Politan that he was done acting like a vigilante and was hanging his gloves up. "Have you thought about picking up a pickleball racket?" asked Politan, an avid pickleball player who suggested that Miles and Peterson could perhaps play doubles. Miles, who could possibly get a chance at parole in 2 years, took another moment to explain how he turned his life around. Said his girlfriend, Tessa Morado, and her children are his inspiration, and he wants to be a better man for them. So for those reasons I just read out, I say good for him. Keep doing the right thing. Keep his head up, and if the parole board can see exactly what this man is doing, they'll set him free and be reunited with his girlfriend and his kids. Who knows? Maybe at that time that he gets out, he could make things official. Instead of being Tessa's boyfriend, he'll be Tessa's husband. But that's wishful thinking on this guy's part here. Next up, former UFC heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez was sentenced for the 2022 shooting that he was involved in. Now, before I get into that, I want to say that I remember reading about this story. I remember bringing it to you here at Bethea'S Byte Reloaded, and I have a deep level of respect for Cain Velasquez, but in a way I agreed with what he did, and in a way I didn't. The point where I didn't is the fact that he took the law into his own hands. If it was a self-defense thing, that'd be a whole different issue. Anyway, the article tells us that former UFC champion Cain Velasquez was sentenced to 5 years in prison for a shooting in 2022 where he chased after the man accused of molesting his son. Velasquez was sentenced in Santa Clara County after he pled no contest to attempted murder, felony assault, and other related gun charges last August for what the district attorney's office called a vigilante shooting spree. He will receive credit for time served. In February 2022, the two-time UFC heavyweight champion fired a gun multiple times at a truck carrying 3 people, including 46-year-old Harry Goularty, who is facing felony child molestation charges, according to the district attorney's office. His defense attorney, Renee Hessling, called the result bittersweet, as they had hoped to keep Velasquez out of prison. Throughout it all, Kane has shown courage and strength of character, Hessling said in a statement. He has taken responsibility for his actions and has been held accountable. The sentence handed down today reflects the complexities of the situation and acknowledges the man behind the headlines. Less than a week prior to the shooting, Goularty was arrested in connection to the sexual assault of a 4-year-old at the daycare owned by his family. He was released without bail a few days later. Officials said he was released under house arrest and was on his way to retrieve an electronic monitoring bracelet when Velasquez attacked. Velasquez shot Goularty's truck in a car chase that lasted for 11 miles. That's according to the district attorney's office. Goularty was uninjured, but his stepfather, who was driving, was hit twice. Velasquez has said the sexual assault incident involved his child and is suing Goularty and his family's daycare for negligence and sexual battery. On his former teammate Kyle Kingsbury's podcast, Velasquez said the way he handled the situation was not the way to do it. We cannot put the law in our own hands, Velasquez said. I know what I did, and I know what I did was very dangerous to other people, Not just to people involved, but innocent people. I understand what I did, and I'm willing to do everything I have to pay that back. Velasquez also said it was important to be open and honest with your kids about what kind of behavior is acceptable and listen to what they have to say. One man's decision to take the law into his own hands left an innocent man wounded and endangered school children, teachers, and many others in our community, District Attorney Jeff Rosen said in a statement. If you want to do justice in Santa Clara County, please apply for a badge. To that end, I agree. Kane did take the law into his own hands, and even with his skills in mixed martial arts, this could have been handled so different. This could have been handled so different to the point where he could have kept a guy locked up at a point to locked up in a hole until police arrived, where they would have taken over. Then he could have filed not only criminal but civil charges too, and kept himself out of jail. Now Velasquez, the former 2-time UFC heavyweight champion of the world, will spend the next 5 years behind bars. Kane, I just hope you learn a valuable lesson with this. Say again, sweetheart. Kane Velasquez. Not you're thinking you're thinking the former WWE star and mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, Glenn Kane Jacobs. All right. Next up, we're gonna look at body cam footage at the scene outside of the home of the late Gene Hackman. All right, let's get a look at this here. Yeah, I'm gonna give you part of the article and then take you right back to Court TV's Julie Grant. But first, authorities have released body cam footage outside of the home of Gene Hackman, where the actor and wife Betty Arakawa were found dead in late February. The redacted footage shows deputies talking with 2 workers who called authorities to report seeing someone lying on the floor inside the home. With no signs of forced entry or other evidence of suspicious circumstances, the deputies were asked about the possibility of a gas leak or carbon monoxide poisoning, and the workers said they didn't see how that could have been the case. Something's not right, one of the workers said. Authorities soon determined there were no leaks that could have been fatal, further fueling a mystery that captured the public's attention. It was solved about a week later when medical investigators confirmed that Hackman died of heart disease with complications from Alzheimer's, about a week after having hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS, a rare rodent-borne disease, took the life of his wife. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and step out of the shot now, and I'm going to take you right back to Court TV and Julie Grant with more on this story.
We're getting a brand new look into the death investigation of actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy. Police released redacted body camera footage from outside of the couple's home. Now, this is where the couple, you recall, were found dead back in February. And this new footage shows workers who called police to report seeing somebody lying on the floor inside. Let's watch.
So you got here and saw the door was open, right? And saw her.
Me and him,
you guys both did.
Yeah, he walked down on that side, checked the door on that side, it was locked, and he said, this door is never locked. So then we kept walking, and I seen something laying there. I thought it was animals that she has.
Yeah.
Until I see him, I've seen him be like, just buckle up, turn around, and then that's when I see him.
Did they find gas or anything in there?
There was no initial detection, but we had windows open and like New Mexico gas coming out.
Oh, okay.
So, because who they are, I don't have it on me. I just want to keep this limited as much as possible, because once this gets out, you know how this is going to turn with the,
A week later, medical examiner said that Hackman died of heart disease and his wife Betsy died from hantavirus. A New Mexico court last week granted a temporary restraining order against the release of any photos or videos that show Hackman inside Hackman and his wife inside of their home, rather. So let's talk about this. What do you think after seeing some of that body camera footage? We've got a little more to play for you. I'm going to bring in our guests. What a great panel we have this morning. I've got former prosecutors Melba Pearson, Randolph Rice, and Josh Ritter all on the program. Thank you all for being with us this morning. And Josh, especially you waking up so early on the West Coast for us. Josh, would you kick off our conversation, please? Watching the video, tell me what jumped out at you.
You know, it's funny. The first thing that struck my mind is we've been so confused as to what that neighborhood was like that no one would notice the comings and goings or the lack thereof of Hackman and his wife, right? Because so much of this has been about why didn't anyone check on them? Why didn't anyone notice? Why didn't they notice that the dogs were coming and going and no one was caring for them? But you're getting a little glimpse, at least, of just kind of how rural an area that was. And that's what struck me immediately, is this might make a little more sense. Sounds like it was a very secluded area that they lived. The surrounding that we're able to see, at least in that small bit of video that we were looking at, looks like it's not like there's neighbors living on top of them. Maybe the idea that they would go unnoticed, maybe the idea that the dogs would go unnoticed makes a little bit more sense now.
Sure. Appreciate it, Josh. You know, speaking of the dog, let's look at a clip where they talk about luring the dog.
Did you take off again? Yeah. Close. Hungry.
Oh, trying to offer the little dog some food there. Yeah, so sad. You know, we know multiple dogs on the property, 2 alive, 1 deceased in the house that died from starvation and dehydration because that dog was in an enclosed area. Melba, to you next, please. What are the things that jumped out at you watching this fresh video footage?
Well, good morning, everyone. And it's just an awful, awful tragedy. I just can't get my mind around, and this, I don't know, this makes me very just sad to think about this, that Gene Hackman was alone for a whole week with no one to care for him, and not understanding because he has Alzheimer's that his wife was dead. And just, I think they probably made a collective decision to, they're going to care for each other because they're very, very intense about their privacy. And they didn't think that this possibly could happen. And you also see that in their wills as well, because both of them basically left their estates to the other spouse, and now both of them are gone. So you think about the trust battle that is going to happen, basically the battle over the estate. And, it's just so awful and tragic that this is the way, both of them had to end their lives.
Right. You're right, Melba. I have another clip here. Let's take a listen to the 911 call.
Are they breathing?
I have no idea. I'm not inside the house. It's closed. It's locked. I can't go in. But I see them. She's laying down on the floor from the window.
Do they appear to be completely awake?
On the way?
Do they appear to be awake or alert?
No. It's not.
Okay. Are they moving at all?
No, they're not moving. Just send somebody up here really quick.
Randolph Rice, to you next, please. What jumped out at you watching all the videos?
Well, if this would have been a different scenario, we know now that they died from natural causes, but, oftentimes when we see body cam, it's the beginning of an investigation of a criminal matter. And unfortunately, that was not the case here, but, looking at these body cams, it just shows you how valuable they could be if this was an investigation. Obviously, the officer showing up on the scene, talking to the caretakers, that's the beginning of the investigation. So fortunately, that wasn't the case here. Unfortunately, it was a death that was natural. But, it just shows you how technology has come so far that we now have all this information that we used to not have 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah, isn't that the truth? I think so many people were just so upset with the news, right? The news of this. And I think, of course, headlines are swirling. He was such a beloved, accomplished actor, and nobody wanted to see him found dead this way. And his wife found dead with him. It's so stunning. And I think at the outset, everybody was thinking, was this something criminal? My gosh, he was elderly. She was not. But anything criminal has been completely ruled out. This is just plain sad. But the conversation isn't stopping, is it? Josh Ritter, you live in California where Gene Hackman worked for many, many years. I would imagine places you go and things you do, people bring this up to you knowing that you're an attorney and you have your show Courtroom Confidential. What are some of the things people say to you, Josh, when you get asked about this case?
You're absolutely right. He was beloved, and I think that is why it immediately caught everyone's interest. And then the circumstances, we all jumped to that idea, I know that I did, that this must have been carbon monoxide poisoning, because initially we thought, how do two people just seemingly drop dead at the same time without any other explanation? As the investigation unfolded, we realized that no, in fact, she had died sometime before him. And now we realized that he tragically was living in that home for several days while she was dead. And that, I think, is the heartbreaking thing that I hear most people talking about. It's just trying to understand what the final moments of his life were like. And like you said, it was incredibly sad. It was incredibly lonely. We know that he was suffering from advanced Alzheimer's, and we wonder how much did he even understand what was going on, but certainly not enough to even call for help. I mean, there was no 911 call made in that time that he was alone in the house. So it's at least the people that I'm speaking to, many people are wondering just why wasn't anyone checking in? Why wasn't he able to call for help if there was some time where he was alone there in the home?
That's a great question, and I guess that's maybe one of those questions that's going to be left unanswered in that case. Next, Karen Reed update. The Text to attorney are off limits. That's a judge's ruling at the final pretrial hearing. Let's get all that together. And a juror from the first trial will join Karen Reed's team. With 1 week to go until jury selection begins in her murder retrial, Karen Reed returned to court for a final motions hearing. Reed is facing multiple charges, including second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. While prosecutors have accused Reed of hitting and killing O'Keefe with her Lexus SUV while driving drunk, Reed and her team have accused the police of a sloppy investigation and a wide-ranging cover-up. Judge Beverly Cannoni deferred ruling on whether to allow Reed's defense to use a third-party defense at her trial. Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan argued that accusing the Commonwealth's witnesses of being involved in O'Keefe's death or bringing up their prior bad acts would prejudice the prosecution's case and distract the jury from the issue at hand. Brennan argued that the defense has a burden to produce evidence linking the alleged third-party culprits to the case and showing that they had motive and opportunity. Reed's attorney, David Yannetti, countered that while the Commonwealth may not agree with the interpretation of the evidence, there is plenty that exists to indicate that O'Keefe entered the house before he was found dead on the property. Yannetti walked through the 3 people the defense has identified as potential third-party culprits: Brian Albert, Colin Albert, and Brian Higgins. Yannetti also argued that a defendant has a constitutional right to present a third-party defense and suggested Brennan was acting more like a defense attorney than a prosecutor. Brennan, a defense attorney who has represented clients including mobster James Whitey Bulger, was hired by the Commonwealth to step in to lead the prosecution for the retrial. Judge Cannoni blocked an attempt by Brennan to access texts between Yannetti and Reed over his arguments that the defendant waived her attorney-client privilege by discussing texts with her attorney in media interviews, interrupting another of Reed's attorneys, Robert Alessi. While he was arguing against Brennan's motion, Judge Cannoni refused to even look at the messages in her chambers, away from the prosecution. "I understand the Commonwealth's argument," she said. "I don't think it's appropriate from my eyes. Motion is denied." Following the hearing, Judge Cannoni issued a written ruling denying the defense's motion to dismiss the case. While she agreed that the disclosure of the Sallyport video from the Kenton Police Department was done late, Cannoni found that Reed's defense failed to show what, if anything, her counsel would have done differently if the disclosure had come earlier. Let's go to Court TV for more coverage on this hearing.
But we want to start the hour with developing news from the Karen Reed case. Multiple agencies reporting, and we have actually located the docket too as well. They have added a new attorney, it appears, on the Karen Reed defense team. And what is fascinating about this new attorney was a member of the jury in Karen Reed 1. She ended up being an alternate in this case, but can you imagine? She was a licensed attorney, licensed in Massachusetts. She sat through the entire Karen Reed case. She has made public statements to WBZ and others saying that she was disgusted by the Commonwealth during the case. Ends up being an alternate, and now they brought her onto the team, apparently, and talk about a move that could really yield dividends. I mean, you're talking about a person that knows the case from a juror standpoint and also an attorney's.
Yeah, so the knowledge that she would bring to the defense team is
is humongous. She would have a lot to say, a lot to offer. Now, when you take a look at this, and it seems that from the reports that she has been added, there are some questions in regard to this. A lot of law review journals have been written about this. What are ethical considerations when a former juror, I should say, goes and joins a defense team? Could they sit on that jury and maybe say, we want a mistrial, we want a hung jury, and then eventually they join the defense team and they get paid? So I don't know what her compensation would be if she is getting compensation for joining the defense team. She is a practicing attorney, so I would assume she is getting paid. But it's a really interesting and big development because of the knowledge that she would bring to the defense team.
And she has been very outspoken. She has been speaking with WBZ, among others, and basically saying that she distrusts this prosecution, the Commonwealth prosecution of Karen Read. She was part of that panel, but she was bounced. She was an alternate. So she didn't deliberate with the rest of the panel. Jeffrey Wolf is watching along with us. He's a criminal defense attorney in Denver, Colorado. Jeffrey, what do you make of this? That this ex-juror sounds like she's going to be joining the Karen Read defense team for Karen Read 2.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like I may be having some difficulties here with my video, but this is an incredibly unique perspective that this defense team is going to be able to get from this juror, because this is who, even though she was an alternate and wasn't in the deliberations, she is someone who was privy to how the jurors were thinking about the case throughout the case. Because as much as judges tell jurors, don't discuss the case during the case, I think we all know that they do. I don't think that we are able to assume that they are never talking about the case throughout the pendency of the case. And so this person is somebody who knows what the jurors thought of the evidence the first time around, who knows inside and out, like you said, the case itself, because she's already sat through the evidence. And I don't think that there's necessarily an ethical consideration as to what she may have done to affect the first trial's outcome, because she wasn't in deliberation to cause the mistrial with the hung jury. She didn't sit in that deliberation room and cause a mistrial through a hung jury, because she wasn't in there. As an alternate juror, you don't sit in and basically make it so that a verdict doesn't come out of that room. She just wouldn't have been in there. And so this is a very, very unique perspective that this defense team is now going to have. And I think it's incredibly invaluable, because any defense attorney and any prosecutor that has talked to a jury after a trial will tell you jurors very often are fixated on parts of the case that the trial lawyers never thought they would fixate on. And so now they have someone on their side who is going to tell them which pieces of this case the jurors were fixated on.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing new for attorneys to go and hire former jurors as consultants in their case. This particular case, she actually is an attorney, so she's going to pick up on things, or would have picked up on things throughout the trial that a non-attorney not necessarily picked up on. But it is fascinating to hear about this and how this will impact their defense going forward, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Because not only, like you said, is it common that you may talk to the jury afterwards, you may consult with them afterwards, but now this person has the dual base of knowledge of having sat through it as a juror, but sat through it as a juror who was thinking about it like a lawyer. That is very rare. It's in a criminal trial, to have a lawyer left on the jury is rare. You are often going to see prosecutors and defense attorneys do everything they can to keep lawyers off the jury so that they don't have that extra perspective of the lawyer sitting in there. You know, you're going to hear, prosecutors say they don't want defense attorneys on their juries, and you're going to hear defense attorneys say,
Yep. Lost Jeffrey there, but making the point that, yeah, lawyers don't like other lawyers on a jury panel for a lot of reasons. They just want some person over there rolling their eyes and think I had done this better, and then they end up, there's just a fear that they're going to end up using the performance of the lawyers over possibly the fact of the case. But she was on the panel, and in this statement to WBZ after one of the trial, motion hearings to carry it too. She said, I came in with an open mind, and that as it progressed, she became more and more sort of underwhelmed by the Commonwealth.
Another reason why you wouldn't necessarily want an attorney on the panel is because other people might defer to that attorney.
Yes, oh yeah.
Be swayed
What you would do,
more
right, yeah.
by their opinion. And so you're like, well, we don't necessarily want that person
Running the show.
running the show. So
Good point. But it's a fascinating development, and that's the news at this hour. Every hour changes here at Court TV. But again, a juror from an alternate juror from the first Karen Read trial has joined apparently the defense team for round 2 as she prepares for her retrial, and they prepare to pick a jury starting next week.
Thank you to Court TV's Ted Rollins and Kelly Craft for the coverage and the start of the Commonwealth versus Karen Read 2 begins on Tuesday. Next, a man accused of holding women as sex slaves is ordered to stand trial. A Milwaukee court official ruled there was probable cause to suspect a local realtor held 2 women captive and sexually assaulted them, ordering him to stand trial. Austin Cronister is charged with human trafficking, false imprisonment, and 2 counts of second-degree assault. At a preliminary hearing last week, 2 investigators testified that the alleged victims identified in court documents as JKP and AEK were in consensual BDSM relationships with Cronister, having signed BDSM contracts agreeing to live with him and other women in a residence referred to as the House of St. Pierre. The terms of their relationship included serving Cronister's sexual desires, upkeep of the home, and participation in sex parties involving Cronister and guests. JKP, whom the defense identified as a nurse, lived with Cronister for more than 6 years. But the investigators testified that the women were subjected to instances of non-consensual sex, or what the witnesses called punishment sex, and extreme acts of violence if they resisted Cronister or tried to leave the home. AEK told authorities Cronister beat her so badly she had bruises on her eyes and face for days. Another time, the woman told authorities Cronister threatened to inject her with a substance that would put her in a coma. Cronister's defense pressured the witnesses for dates and details to distinguish between their unconventional yet consensual lifestyle and Cronister's alleged criminal conduct. Investigator Susan Blom with the Milwaukee District Attorney's Office testified that AEK's co-workers observed injuries to her face and appeared to be in a situation that was beyond her control. Blom, however, testified she was unaware that AEK allegedly bragged about the injuries to her eyes to others in the BDSM community, according to Cronister's lawyer, Nicole Muller. Milwaukee Police Detective Michael Walker testified that JKP said she wanted to leave the relationship because she didn't like the other women Cronister was bringing into the home. When JKP tried to leave, Cronister allegedly put her in a headlock, smashed her head on the floor, and then forced intercourse on her while she was unconscious. In a criminal complaint, JKP told investigators that the women in the home had the same slave tattoo of a beetle holding a poppy flower. In addition to a tattoo, JKP claimed Cronister assigned them slave numbers. AEK told investigators they were required to wear a collar to remind them they were being evaluated for service. Chronister is due back in court on April 10th for an arraignment where he is expected to enter a plea on the charges. I really don't have too much to say as far as commentary on this, other than this guy is sick and he needs to be put away. Just saying. Speaking of sick and need to be put away, the stepmother accused of holding a man captive for 20 years is due in court. Alright. A woman accused of holding her stepson captive in a Connecticut home was briefly in court, where her arraignment was pushed to the very next week. 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan is charged with assault, kidnapping, unlawful restraint, cruelty, and reckless endangerment. Sullivan was arrested on February 17th after a man identified as male victim 1 set fire to their home to escape. She was released after posting a $300,000 bail. At the beginning of the proceedings, prosecutors said they intended to file a motion to modify the conditions of release. The defense requested that proceedings be moved so they have time to respond to the state's motion. Sullivan's defense also revealed their intention to plead not guilty to the charges. The man, now 32 years of age, told authorities his confinement began when he was about 11 years old. He said he was locked in a room without heat or air conditioning nearly all day and night and given limited food and water. With no access to a bathroom, he devised ways to dispose of his waste, including using a series of straws that led to a hole in a window. Because of a lack of dental care, pieces of his teeth would break off when he did eat. He saved some of his daily ration and 2 small water bottles to bathe without soap and cut his own hair. Here's more details from Court TV.
Who's in the house? Who else is in here?
My stepson is in here.
How many other people?
That's it. I have 2 cats.
Everybody's out?
Yes.
But your stepson's still inside?
Yeah, he's right here.
Okay,
yes.
come out. Come down the road. Come on.
Yeah, her poor stepson set that fire deliberately to draw attention to him being held against his will. That is how he was discovered. An adult stepson, mind you, at a very, very low body weight, in emaciated condition. He's 32 years old, going to need a lot of help, a lot of treatment, physically and mentally, based on what police say this man had to endure. Again, this is his stepmother, who is the defendant, who police, they held him and starved him in that house for many, many years. Let's take a listen together to the 911 call.
Oh my God. 911 was Daddy.
What's the address?
Please hurry. There's a fire.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Lake
There's
Street?
a fire. I'm trying to.
Ma'am, what's
Still
up
Lake
there?
Street. The TV. I don't know. My stepson is in his room, and I don't know. He did something with the TV. I was sleeping. I fell asleep.
See flames or smoke?
Yes. Come on, Steph. Come on.
Okay. Can you get?
Yes, we need an ambulance, please.
Okay.
Please, we need an ambulance.
Ma'am, all right. You said something's on fire. Now you need an ambulance. What's going on there?
Yes, his room. The TV in his room.
Did he get injured? Is he on fire?
Yes, he's injured. Please send the ambulance.
Ma'am, I'm going to send the ambulance. I need to know what's going on and why they're going out there. Where is he injured?
I don't know. He's I don't know. I don't know. He's kind of passed out. He's out of it. Please.
My goodness. Let's go inside the courtroom together. We're going to see the defendant appearing at her first court appearance since being arrested. Let's go in together. Apparently, she's out on bond as well. Take a look.
Yes,
state has advised that they're attempting to file such a motion. I am asking for Friday so that we have time to prepare and respond to it.
Under the practice book, we do have 2 days notice. So I'll see everyone back here on Friday.
Attorney, did the court wish to have us enter an not guilty plea at this time? Would you prefer to do that on Friday?
Why don't we wait till Friday?
Perfect. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, you're all set. And we'll recess till 10:30.
All rise, court is recessed.
Okay, so it's going to be rescheduled. So that was quick. Her arraignment is scheduled for Friday. Important to understand, too, there are 2 different arraignments that happen in the criminal court process. So there's the initial one at magistrate court, which is this one for Ms. Sullivan. And then there's the formal arraignment down the line after, let's say, a preliminary hearing or the probable cause hearing that we just had once the case gets into the higher court, the Court of Common Pleas.
Thanks to Julie Grant. We're gonna stick and stay on this case, and we're gonna find out exactly what all Kimberly Sullivan will be charged with as she gets ready to go to trial. Next up, the toxic roommate murder trial has reached a verdict. The state of North Dakota versus Nicole Rice. And she was charged with the murder of her young roommate, charged with the death of Anita Knudsen, who was found stabbed to death on June 4th, 2007. At that time of the murder, the 2 women lived together through friends said the 2 had a strained relationship. One friend told police they recalled Rice telling Knudsen, "One way or another, I'm going to get you out of the house." So now, what I'm going to do is take you to an update regarding that verdict.
Court will now have the clerk read the verdict.
State of North Dakota, in District Court, County of Ward, North Central Judicial District. State of North Dakota plaintiff versus Nicole Aaron Rice, defendant. Criminal number 51 2022 CR 00421. Verdict form. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn, find the defendant Nicole Aaron Rice not guilty of the information dated at Grand Forks, North Dakota, this 26th day of March 2025.
Is this the jury's verdict? Can you calm down a little bit, please? Is it the jury's verdict? Okay, the juror nodded. The jury leader nodded. Ms. Sorgan, do you wish the jury poll?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Sand, do you wish the jury poll?
No, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you very much for your service. We appreciate the time that you allotted for this case. You are now excused. My admonition no longer applies to you, so you can talk about this case if you choose to do so, and you can also not talk about the case if you choose to do so. Please rise.
Okay, so Nicole Rice was found not guilty of the murder of Anita Knudsen. While that may be great for her, Anita's family is still doing literally a life sentence without her, and the reaction from Nicole's family, jumping up and down and cheering as if let's see, what's the best way to describe it? like they got the number one draft pick in the NFL draft. I'll shoot from the hip on this later. But for now, once again, Nicole Rice found not guilty of felony murder of her roommate nearly 20 years ago. Okay, this one has brought some good news to a lot of people. Selena's killer, Yolanda Saldivar, was up for parole. What we needed to know. I won't do that one. I'll just go ahead and give you the result from that in a little bit. We're gonna take you to the next story. Is prosecutors finding a heart-shaped note in socks sent to Luigi Mangione. Yeah. Someone tucked a heart-shaped note of encouragement into socks packed for Luigi Mangione to wear to court last month in the United Healthcare CEO murder case. That's according to prosecutors in a filing made public. A court officer intercepted the note, which urged the jailed defendant to know there are thousands of people wishing you luck. Manhattan prosecutors wrote in responding to recent requests from Mangione's defense lawyers. They include a bid for him to get a laptop to review legal material in his cell while he awaits trial in the December shooting death of 50-year-old Brian Thompson. Thompson was killed outside a Midtown motel where the health insurer was holding an investor conference. 26-year-old Mangione has pleaded not guilty. A message seeking comment on the prosecutor's filing was sent to his lawyers. Objecting to the proposed laptop as a request for unmerited special treatment, prosecutor Joel Siderman wrote, quote, special treatment to the defendant's benefit was violated when prosecutors made accommodations for the defendant's fashion needs during the last court appearance. Most jail defendants wear jail uniforms at routine court dates when there's no jury present. Mangione, however, was allowed to change into clothes brought by his legal team for the February 21st hearing. Mangione has attracted a cult following as a stand-in for frustrations over health insurance coverage denials and hefty medical bills. And dozens of his supporters showed up for the hearing. One sporting a green Luigi hat from the Mario Brothers video game franchise, and many wore green, the Luigi character's color, as a symbol of solidarity. Mangione himself wore a green sweater, consistent with what his sympathizers were calling for his supporters to wear. Some elected officials and others have decried the fascination with Mangione as glorifying violence and vigilantism. The note, plus another heart-shaped message addressed to someone called Joan, was hidden in a piece of cardboard at the center of a new pair of Argyle socks, Siderman wrote. It's not clear who wrote the note or slipped it into the socks, the filing didn't say, and prosecutors later declined to elaborate. Mangione donned the socks, but later took them off because he felt they did not look good, according to Siderman. Mangione appeared in court in loafers, his bare ankles shackled. In addition to the Manhattan case, Mangione faces federal charges in Thompson's killing and state-level gun possession and other charges in Pennsylvania. He hasn't entered any pleas in those cases. Ay, 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 ay. Are we gonna have one of those cases where a possible murder suspect is going to be glorified before the trial even gets started? This isn't looking good already. I mean, already he's got supporters by the thousands already, and all of them are like the article said are wearing what I'm calling Luigi Mario green. Something's got to give here. I'll keep an eye out for more updates on this case. Next up, prosecutors are going to ask the judge to deny Brian Kohlberger's family seating at his upcoming trial. Let's see. Okay, that's a short one. Anyway, the Todd County prosecutors are asking Judge Stephen Hippler to reject Brian Kohlberger's request to give his family priority seating at his August trial. Kohlberger is accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students in November 2022. New court documents filed by the state say Kohlberger is asking his family be granted the same rights as the victims' families. However, prosecutors argued that per Idaho code, the immediate families of homicide victims have constitutional and statutory rights to attend. There are no provisions giving the family of defendants that same right. In addition, the state may call members of the Kohlberger family to testify at the trial, in which case, the court document outlines, the state anticipates it will motion the court, or the court will, on its own accord, generally exclude testifying witnesses from the courtroom so that they cannot hear other witnesses' testimony. So there you go. The families of the victims have priority seating. The families of the defendants, not so much. So they're gonna have to come up with something else to give Kohlberger what he wants, if anything. Next, a Maui doctor is accused of trying to kill his wife while hiking. Okay. A Maui doctor tried to use two syringes on his wife after pushing her off a hiking trail and hitting her head with a rock about 10 times, according to police and court documents. Gerhard Konig's bail was set at $5 million, and a preliminary hearing in the attempted murder charge is scheduled for this coming week. An attorney listed for him in court documents didn't immediately return an email seeking comment. The alleged assault stemmed from Konig's desire to take a selfie with the couple was on Palipuka Trail in Honolulu, according to a probable cause document filed in court. The trailhead is a short drive from downtown Honolulu and traverses a ridge with dramatic ocean and mountain views. She mentioned that while on the trail, Gerhardt was standing close to the edge and asked her to take a selfie with him. That was according to a Honolulu police declaration. Konig's wife said she told him she didn't feel comfortable taking a picture with him that close to the edge and began to walk back. He yelled at her to come back, and when she refused, he pushed her into the bushes where they began to struggle, according to the document. The wife managed to get away. Konig then picked up a rock and hit her on the head about 10 times while also grabbing the back of her hair and smashing her face in the ground, according to the document. She crawled over to 2 hikers who heard her yelling for help, and the hikers called 911. The wife also told police she saw Gerhardt take out 2 syringes from his bag and attempt to use them on her, but she was able to get them away from him, according to the police declaration. She sustained multiple large lacerations to her face and head and was taken to a hospital in serious but stable condition. Konig fled the scene, prompting an hours-long search and the closure of the state park, according to police. Officers arrested him that same evening following a brief foot chase. Koenig is an anesthesiologist at Maui Health, which operates hospitals and clinics in Maui County and is an affiliate of Kaiser Permanente. In a statement to media organizations, Maui Health said he was suspended pending investigation. Maui Health's online directory previously listed Koenig as a provider, according to the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, but his name was no longer in it. Kaiser Permanente said in the statement that Koenig is not an employee, but is employed by an independent entity contracted to provide medical services. Kaiser said it has suspended his credentials and his ability to treat patients pending an investigation. And as for the victim in the case, like they said earlier, she was in critical but stable condition. So I'll keep an update on this case as it proceeds. Next up, wife pleads not guilty in the death of California Fire Captain Rebecca Marodi. The woman accused of fatally stabbing Cal Fire Captain Rebecca Marodi appeared in court for the first time. 53-year-old Yolanda Marodi pleaded not guilty to a first-degree murder charge in her wife's death. She's accused of stabbing Captain Marodi to death at their Ramoa home on February 17. According to an arrest warrant, Yolanda killed Captain Marodi after the victim told her she was leaving her and ending their marriage. A week after Captain Marodi reportedly told Yolanda about the divorce, surveillance video at their home caught Yolanda allegedly chasing her across the front yard. At one point in the surveillance video, a voice believed to be Captain Marodi is heard yelling, "Yolanda, please, I don't want to die." Captain Marodi then appears in the video with what looks like blood on her back. A voice believed to be Yolanda's replied, "You should have thought of that before." The two enter the home and Captain Marodi is not seen again in the footage. Let's go to Court TV for more on this case.
Welcome back. This morning we're giving a voice to victims like Becky Marodi, the decorated California fire captain who was murdered in her home, allegedly by her wife. The suspect, Yolanda Marodi, is now in custody, captured across the border in Mexicali after spending a month in the wind. She was arraigned from her hospital room. More now from Scripps News San Diego's Laura Acevedo.
Yolanda Marodi appeared in court from a hospital bed Wednesday, pleading not guilty to the murder of her wife, Cal Fire Captain Rebecca Marodi. A judge ordered us not to show her face, but we saw her lying down, connected to oxygen. The judge denied her bail, citing what he called the extreme violence in this case, revealing Captain Marodi had 34 stab or slash wounds, also citing Yolanda's previous criminal history, having been convicted of voluntary manslaughter for killing her then husband in the year 2000. Captain Marodi's mother and other family and friends present for the arraignment.
I am grateful to our law enforcement partners, both in the United States and in Mexico, who collaborated to bring the defendant back here so that the victim's family can start that process to justice.
The deputy district attorney couldn't comment on why Yolanda was in the hospital, but afterwards, a family friend of Captain Marodi's told me she questions Yolanda's motives and whether or not anything is actually medically wrong with her. On Tuesday, the Cal Fire Captain's family and friends gathered for her celebration of life.
I know that somewhere she's laughing that infectious laugh, probably telling inappropriate jokes to St. Peter and waiting for the rest of us to catch up.
If convicted, Yolanda Marodi faces 25 years to life in prison. Her next court date is set for late April. In El Cajon, Laura Acevedo, ABC 10 News.
Lots of questions here. Let's start with why her face had to be pixelated with the video and the court saying we can't show her from the hospital room. Let's bring in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor David Bruno on this. David, people have questions because, as you know, when this lady was captured in Mexicali and she was handed over to U.S. Marshals, she looked fine. We have video of that. It didn't appear that anything was wrong with her. Let's show the video now. And feel free to comment over this as we watch it together, David. What do you think maybe why the judge didn't want her face broadcast?
Just caution. I mean, she's in a treatment facility, right? I mean, there's some physician-patient privileges that we talk about with communications. And the fact that she's in the hospital, maybe. I mean, I think there's a lot of discretion that went into that particular decision. Julia, I had a similar situation. When I was a prosecutor, we were investigating the death of a priest. And the janitor of the particular school came back the next day and feigned some medical event as well. He was brought to the hospital, and we followed the evidence all the way to his house, where we found bloody towels and a knife, and then went to interview him, getting a confession later in the hospital. So maybe the feigning of these particular issues on this particular defendant, but again, she fled consciousness of guilt in a month since the particular murder. So I can't see how this medical issue is going to play out in the particular murder case.
Right. How about that issue spotting? You're doing a brilliant job this morning, David, with that, with the consciousness of guilt. You've pointed out in 3 of our cases this morning, all 3.
Yep.
And all domestic violence cases. These facts are very telling in the behaviors. I have a clip for you. This is a beautiful clip. This is how friends of Captain Becky Marody were remembering her at her funeral.
Well, Becky wasn't the first woman to put on turnouts and get the job done. She was one that did it. She did it very well. She did it her way.
She taught us that heroism isn't just in the flames. It's in the way you show up for people every single day.
She's the only firefighter I've ever seen, Mom, wake up with wool socks on her hands. I think she had every stitch of clothes in her day bag on.
I know that somewhere she's laughing that infectious laugh, probably telling inappropriate jokes to St. Peter and waiting for the rest of us to catch up.
So mourn as we must, and let's get back out there and, for Becky, kick up some dust.
Yeah, she's the victim. She's the victim. Becky Marody, that's who we want to focus on, not Yolanda Marody, except for just discussing how she's going to be prosecuted. David Bruno, you've done many, many cases as a prosecutor. How do you foresee this one going?
Yeah, just look at that package. I mean, this is the life of impact. This is a life of service. I'm a big proponent of doing hard things. All right? Oftentimes, fear keeps us back from ultimate growth and improvement in our lives and our careers. And this particular woman, look at this. She rose to the level of captain as a service woman, going into fires and saving people. We've seen all the devastating fires in California, throughout the country, and it just makes me think of impact and service of this woman, and I applaud her.
Yeah, you're so right, David. She is who's going to be remembered in all this. Becky Marody is going to be remembered for all the reasons you stated, being a real-life hero. Her wife, maybe the prosecution will be pretty non-remarkable, you know. I mean, maybe this will wind up a plea.
Prior conviction, too. The prior conviction.
She stabbed her husband, her former husband. Yolanda Marody did that, and so we'll see if she goes to trial on this. David, thank you for the insight. And as we take a look at this photo on our wall where we remember the victims and put the focus on the victims, this morning we want to send love and light to Becky Marody's family. She was always a positive person. Her family and friends say, she was always smiling like she is in this picture. She devoted her life to service and protecting others.
That's one thing I absolutely agree on. That on keeping the spotlight on the victim while 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 also seeking justice for the victim. And let's just hope that when the time comes, Captain Rebecca Marodi will get the justice she is due. Speaking of justice, now normally if I catch a conviction and a proper sentence, the last words you will hear from me is justice served. Well, this time around, I got those words echoed again, but this time it's for a totally different reason. This time, a conviction actually changes or introduces a law. Somebody said there ought to be a law, and they jumped on it. And it was Ruby Frankie's conviction that sparked change. Let me break this down right now. Utah added new protections for the children of online content creators following the child abuse conviction of Ruby Frankie, a mother of 6 who dispensed parenting advice to millions on YouTube before her arrest in 2023. Governor Spencer Cox signed a law under the encouragement of Frankie's now ex-husband that gives adults a path to scrub from all platforms the digital content they were featured in as minors, and requires parents to set aside money for kids featured in the content. Kevin Frankie told lawmakers in February that he wished he'd never let his ex-wife post their children's lives online and use them for profit. Children cannot give informed consent to be filmed on social media, period, he said. Vlogging my family, putting my children into public social media was wrong, and I regret it every day. Let's go back to Julie Grant to get a little further insight as to this story as it was trending in true crime.
We've been looking for 30 straight minutes for her, and I was starting to get worried, and I was like, okay, we're gonna start calling around the neighborhood, and if I can't find Eve in the next 20 minutes, I'm calling the police. And then I found this. You only got a little gist of it on camera. All of the discipline takes place off camera.
Momfluencer Ruby Frankie collected over 2 million followers on her social media before she was convicted of felony child abuse. Her fall from grace is now leading to a change in Utah law. On Tuesday, Utah added some new protections for the children of online creators like Ruby Frankie. So under the encouragement of Frankie's now ex-husband, Kevin, that law is going to allow the scrubbing of digital content featuring minors on all platforms. Under the new law, online creators featuring children will be required to also set aside 15% of their earnings into a trust fund for the kids. And the parents of child actors will also be required to place a portion of their earnings in a trust for them. Now, Frankie and her good buddy therapist Jody Hildebrandt were both sentenced to spend 30 years behind bars. And so this morning we're asking, will this new law be effective? Let's bring in our power panel. So happy to have with me this morning entertainment commentator and actress and photographer Holland Reed. Still with us also FBI retired special agent Jennifer Coffindaffer and attorney Michael J. Brown. Okay, Holland, let me go to you on this one. You've followed Ruby Frankie all through, the height of fame to her demise, and now here we go. The law inspired by her bad acts. What do you think? Do you think this is going to be a good thing?
I think it's a great thing. I think we dealt with this. Think back to Britney Spears. Think back to all these conservatorships. There's one thing to be shock value entertainment. There's another thing to abuse, exploit, and then call it parenting and use it for profit. I think we know she's going to jail for a while, but in order for this to continue, we have to have cases like this in place so that children are protected when they're not being abused and exploited. These kids did not have a choice. They were in her care and they were used for her profit and gain. I think this is a really good eye-opening experience for people that do put their kids out there on social media and then profit from it.
Right, Holland. I couldn't agree more. Let's go back to when she was sentenced and what she said to her babies.
To my babies, my 6 little chicks, you're a part of me. I was the mama duck who was consistently leading you to safety. I can see now. Over the past 4 years, I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger.
Oh, she was a mama duck that made a lot of money, too, as we know. Jen Coffindaffer, let me go to you next, please. Your thoughts on the new law?
Well, I'm thrilled for the new law, but the biggest part of the law that I like is this part that can scrub that social media from these embarrassing and humiliating and degrading moments. That's the piece that I like the most. Yes, it's fine to set some money aside for the kids. They certainly deserve it. But that's the piece that these kids have to live with for life. And by the way, Ruby Franke deserved an Oscar for that. She bound her kids. She put duct tape around them. She made them stand in the sun. And I didn't buy one word of that on a side note.
Jen, I love the point you made. Thank you for that. Michael J. Brown, boy, oh boy, it's a tricky world out there, isn't it? Where, a parent can share things like she was an oversharer, right? And, not illegal. But just what a bad world it can be and the exposure that can be done to kids, the risks associated with that, people who may want to do them harm. Love your thoughts on this issue, please.
Julie, great law. It really protects these kids who have no option in the decision-making process. They're children. They're being, I want to say, exploited in some cases. In other cases, they're not. But at the end of the day, when they mature, they can make that decision if they want to remove this from the social media platform. And the other part of this is, hey, mom or dad are making all this money off of them. Wouldn't it be nice if they profit to some extent? So the fact that they're guaranteed a percentage also is somewhat refreshing. So I think it's a great law. There's no downside, all upside for these young children who have really no choice in this process.
Yeah, well said. They didn't have a choice, and now these poor kids, we just hope they're getting the help they need, therapy, healing, all of that. On behalf of all of us here, we send them our good wishes.
Absolutely. I want to, and again, I thank Julie Grant and her panel for that, for covering all this information on this new law in Utah that'll protect kids like Ruby Franke's kids, to hopefully be sure that nothing like this will ever happen to him again. And in the words of one of my favorite old school wrestlers, the Big Boss Man, now that's justice. Next up, Donna Adelson wants a storyline in her daughter's book excluded from the trial. Interesting development here. Donna Adelson was back in court for a motions hearing to address her request to exclude the storyline of her daughter's book from her upcoming murder trial. Adelson is charged with masterminding the killing of her former son-in-law, FSU law professor Dan Markle, who was shot and killed in his driveway in 2014. Markle was in the middle of a contentious custody battle with his ex-wife, Donna's daughter, Wendy Adelson, at the time of his death. Donna's son, Charlie Adelson, has been convicted for his role in the murder-for-hire plot, along with Charlie's ex-girlfriend, Catherine Magbanua, and the two hitmen who carried out the actual shooting. Wendy authored a fictional book that closely resembled her real life, and Donna's defense argued it would be confusing to jurors to include the book because the main character did not feel stuck in Tallahassee and thanked her husband for bringing her, quote unquote. The hearing was a renewal of a motion by Donna's new defense team. It was initially denied in September when Donna's prior defense team filed it. Donna's current counsel also argued that additional facts were not previously known. The defense says evidence shows Wendy's book was originally published on September 15, 2011, before she was denied her petition to relocate from Tallahassee to South Florida in 2013 with her children, and the alleged conspiracy in 2014. The state mentioned having emails from Wendy that showed she was unhappy in Tallahassee. They say the book was a continuation of that evidence with passages that are autobiographical. Judge Stephen Everett is expected to issue his ruling at a later date. And that's going to be very interesting to see when we get there. Next up, a babysitter is arrested after stabbing and killing a 3-year-old girl. See, authorities are investigating after a 3-year-old was found stabbed. According to Lieutenant Robert Price with the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, the investigation began around 3:30 a.m. when a man called 911 saying a babysitter had just stabbed his child and then ran away. Oh, mind you, that was early last Wednesday morning. As of that afternoon, police sources say the suspect in the child's killing is 41-year-old Marquetta Lucretia Phillips, not pictured. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the man and his 3-year-old daughter, who was suffering from multiple stab wounds. The daughter was taken to a local hospital where she was ultimately pronounced dead. Officers canvassed the area and located the babysitter who was arrested. This is an isolated incident. It's just a very tragic and unfortunate incident, Price said. Locals in the area expressed shock and disbelief upon waking up to crime scene tape and police cars lining their neighborhood. That was really sad to me in the morning, hearing that a child's life was taken here where I live. Anthony Dominguez told Scripps News Las Vegas' Alyssa Bethencourt. Dominguez told us his neighborhood is normally peaceful. Since I found out, it just really hit the heart, Dominguez said. And I feel really bad and give love and prayers to that child and to the families and people that are affected. Another neighbor expressed concern for the child's family. I hope God helps them because this must be horrible for them, they said. Must be horrible. Phillips is expected to appear in court, and the police investigation is still ongoing. And when we get more information, I'll pass that information right on to you. Now, I bring you to the story that I kind of teased earlier. Selena's killer denied parole. Yolanda Saldivar will be eligible for parole again in 2030. The woman convicted of killing Tejano music legend Selena Quintanilla Perez has been denied parole after spending decades behind bars for fatally shooting the young singer at a Texas motel in 1995. That was according to the state's parole board on this past Thursday. Yolanda Saldivar will continue serving a life sentence at a prison in Gatesville, Texas, after a 3-member panel of the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles voted not to not release her. In a statement explaining the denial, the board said the panel found that Saldivar continues to pose a threat to public safety and that the nature of the crime indicated a conscious disregard for the lives, safety, or property of others. Her case will be eligible to be reviewed again and for parole in 2030. The singer, known to her fans simply as Selena, was one of the first Mexican Americans to make it into the mainstream music scene and was on the verge of crossing over into the English language pop market when she was killed. Saldivar founded Selena's fan club and had been the manager of the singer's clothing boutiques, Selena, etc., until she was fired in early March 1995 after money was discovered missing. Selena, a Corpus Christi native, was just 23 years of age when she was shot in the back with a .38 caliber revolver at a Days Inn motel in Corpus Christi on March 31st, 1995. She was able to run to the motel lobby where she collapsed, and she was pronounced dead at a hospital an hour later. Motel employees testified that Selena named Yolanda in room 158 as her attacker. "I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to kill anybody," a sobbing Saldivar said during a 9-hour standoff with police. She told police she had bought the .38 caliber revolver to kill herself. More than 50,000 people lined up to view Selena's body the day before she was laid to rest in Seaside Memorial Park on April 3rd, 1995, just 13 days before her 24th birthday. Saldivar's trial was moved to Houston because of the publicity surrounding the case. Saldivar testified that she had intended to kill herself during the confrontation with Selena, but that the gun misfired. On October 23rd, 1995, a jury in Houston convicted Saldivar of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. While in prison, Saldivar, a former nurse, obtained her paralegal and associate degree in criminal justice and has filed several civil rights complaints alleging mistreatment by the state's prison system. That's according to court records. She also helped 4 other inmates to file petitions. In court documents filed in 2016, Saldivar said she was being held in protective custody, meaning she was segregated from other inmates, because prison officials were concerned for her safety due to the high-profile nature of her case. She filed several appeals of her conviction, but they were all rejected. Selena, the Queen of Tejano, rose to stardom and won a Grammy during a Tejano music boom in the early 1990s. Her hits include Bidi Bidi Bamba, Como la Flor, Amor Prohibido, No Me Queda Más, and Tu Solo Tu. Dreaming of You, her English-language crossover album, released a few months after her death, topped the Billboard 200 and featured hits I Could Fall in Love and the title track Dreaming of You. Jennifer Lopez played the singer in Selena, a 1997 biopic. The Grammys awarded Selena a posthumous Lifetime Achievement Award in 2021. Now, I've been all over the internet, and everyone has been talking about this. What would happen if Yolanda Saldivar would have her parole granted? And let's just say a lot of the responses were not favorable. In fact, I'm quoting someone on TikTok who said that in a little twist on one of the Selena song titles, if Yolanda Saldivar was released from prison, it was going to be a case of bitty bitty bang bang. Those are not my words. This was somebody from TikTok. I forget who. I don't want to call. I'm trying to protect the innocent here, so I'm not calling any names. But that's exactly what this person's words were. And a lot of us agreed that if they are that serious, I mean, there are literally 2 cases Americans are united about. Yolanda Salazar not being released from prison, and the fact that Casey Anthony got away with murder of Kaylee. But the latter is another story. Anyway, they're saying that Yolanda Salazar not being released from prison is the safer option. But that's as far as I'm going with it. Next, we are getting ready to start with the cult mom conspiracy trial. Arizona versus Lori Daybell. And I know you remember that name. If you don't, let me remind you. After being sentenced to life in prison in Idaho, Lori Daybell is now standing trial in Arizona. In 2023, Lori was convicted of murdering her two youngest children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and conspiring to kill her fifth husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. Her husband, Chad Daybell, was convicted of the same charges and sentenced to death. Now she's in Arizona, acting as her own attorney on charges in the death of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, and conspiring in an attempt to kill her niece's ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux. The two cases will be tried separately, with the case regarding Charles's death going to trial first. Lori married her fourth husband, Charles, on February 24th of 2006 in Las Vegas. In 2013, the couple adopted JJ from Charles's sister and her husband, Kay and Larry Woodcock, who were JJ's grandparents. In 2016, the couple moved to Arizona, where they settled down with Tylee and JJ. 3 years later, Charles filed for divorce, indicating he was concerned about her mental health, according to East Idaho News. Lori's older brother, Alex Cox, fatally shot Charles on July 11, 2019, while he was arguing with Lori after picking JJ up for school. Police said during the argument, Alex claimed Charles hit him over the head with a bat. Alex told police that after he was hit in the head, he retrieved a gun from his bedroom and shot Charles in self-defense. In a probable cause statement from the Chandler Police Department, investigators said no emergency aid was provided for Charles, and he was left bleeding on the floor for approximately 43 minutes before calling 911. A grand jury indicted Lori on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder for the death of Charles. Jury selection is set to begin tomorrow, March 31st. And I will be keeping an eye on this trial, hopefully beginning to end, leading to a verdict. Next up, we talked about how Kimberly Sullivan is going on trial for holding her stepson captive. Now the family is seeking a reunion with a man who says he was held captive by his stepmother. For 14 years, Heather Tessman had looked for her half-brother, whom she'd last seen as a young child in the 1990s. Yet nothing turned up in internet and public record searches beyond the fact he'd been born. Just weeks ago, she and the world finally learned his story. He was the 32-year-old emaciated man rescued from a Connecticut house fire in February, who told police he had been held captive in his own home for the past 2 decades. Tessman, who turned 35, was stunned but excited he was found, but she said police have not allowed her or her mother, who gave up custody of her son when he was an infant, to visit him as he recovers at an undisclosed location because of the ongoing investigation. Outside a courthouse in Waterbury, Connecticut, Tessman was asked by reporters what she would say to him. I would say that I love you and I just want to be here for you, she said. And I have a bunch of books that I think I would love to let you borrow. Movies, video games, whatever. The man's stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, has been charged with kidnapping, felony assault, cruelty to persons, and other crimes. She made a brief appearance in the courthouse Wednesday and was scheduled to return Friday. I understand the whole world has jumped on those allegations and has already convicted my client, Sullivan's lawyer, Ioannis Kalotis, told reporters. But the good thing about America is that's not how we work. She's presumed innocent until proven otherwise in court. Sullivan entered a not guilty plea to the charges. A judge granted prosecutors' request for GPS monitoring. The man who police have not named told authorities that he set fire to his Waterbury home on February 17th in an attempt to win his freedom. Firefighters pulled him from the house. At a hospital, medical staff said he was suffering from severe malnutrition. He was 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighed only 69 pounds. He said he had been locked in a small room with no heat or air conditioning for most of every day since he was about 11 years old. He said he was only let out for short periods to do chores. His father, Craig Sullivan, had let him out of the room for longer, but he died last year, according to a warrant for Kimberly Sullivan's arrest. He said he was hungry all the time and his food and water were limited. Police said he was unenrolled from Waterbury's public school system in 2004 after educators contacted child welfare officials with concerns about his well-being. He apparently was going to be homeschooled. Officials from the State Department of Children and Families and Waterbury Police visited the home around 2004 and 2005. Police say they saw no cause for concern at the time. The man alleged that he couldn't tell anyone about his plight because Sullivan threatened him with longer confinement and even less food. Tessman and her mother, Tracy Valorand, believe Craig and Kimberly Sullivan, as well as state and local officials, failed him, and they want justice. Tessman called Kimberly Sullivan a monster, that's my word, and said she didn't believe Sullivan's statement that she did nothing wrong. I think that the world is shocked by his condition, Tessman said. Like, how can you not realize that someone is so frail and malnourished and just mistreated in your own home? That's just, I don't buy it. Officials with the Department of Children and Families said they are still looking for any records on the man. They have said reports of neglect or abuse deemed unsubstantiated are erased 5 years after investigations are complete. Waterbury school officials say they too are looking for records. State lawmakers, meanwhile, are calling for answers on how this could have happened, while advocacy groups are questioning whether more oversight is needed for homeschooling in Connecticut. Valorant said she hasn't seen her son since he was 6 months old when she gave up custody, which she said she thought at the time was in his best interest. She said Craig Sullivan would not let her see her son, and she had looked for him with Tessman. I was heartbroken, angry. There's just so many emotions, Valorant said about learning what happened to her son. You don't think of this happening to anybody, let alone your own child. I agree with the sister in that Kimberly Sullivan is a monster for treating that young man this way. I mean, come on. 5'9" and only 69 pounds at 32 years of age? And that's when they found him. I hope and pray that Kimberly Sullivan gets the whole entire book thrown at her for what she did to that young man. And finally, one more piece of celebrity news. Sean Kingston and his mother were found guilty in a federal fraud trial. They will be sentenced in July. Sean Kingston and his mother, Janice Turner, were found guilty of fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud in a federal trial in Broward County, Florida. The 35-year-old singer, whose legal name is Keyshawn Anderson, was placed under house arrest with electronic monitoring while Turner was taken into custody. The singer must additionally post a surety bond of a home valued at $500,000 and $200,000 cash per NBC6 South Florida. Their sentencing is scheduled for July 11. The trial began on Monday, March 24th and concluded with closing arguments on Friday, March 28th. The jury reached their decision after 3.5 hours of deliberation, per NBC6. Kingston, who did not testify during the trial, and his mother were convicted of defrauding several businesses, including multiple jurors, a television installment company, and a high-end car dealership. The total sum of items the pair obtained exceeded $1 million, prosecutors said. The judge decided Turner was a flight risk, partly because she did testify, per Local 10. In footage the outlet published, Kingston can be heard telling U.S. Marshal agents to protect my mother as he was escorted from the courthouse. During the trial, Fort Lauderdale jeweler Mosh Ettery testified that he lost his credibility after a failed $285,000 transfer from Kingston, NBC6 reported on Thursday, March 27. I'm being scammed, Ettery recounted on the stand. The pair were arrested in May 2024 and made their first court appearance in July. They were each charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and 5 counts of wire fraud. Turner would often ensure deliveries and wire transfers, only to send fraudulent transfers instead, according to the indictment. The scheme went on for several years. During the trial, the defense argued that the prosecution didn't have evidence that Turner and Kingston intended to commit fraud and said some of the alleged victims got their money and merchandise back, per NBC6. The singer, who was born in Miami and raised in Jamaica, first rose to fame internationally for his 2007 hit song Beautiful Girls. His breakthrough continued throughout the 2010s, including a collaboration with Justin Bieber and an appearance on the hit Disney Channel show Sweet Life on Deck. Looks like all that fame is coming crashing down on Sean Kingston and his mother on top of it. So looks like it truly is justice served. All right. You know, actually, I promised I would shoot from the hip on the Nicole Rice verdict, and this is what I want to bring up. Let's go back and look at the reaction one more time. All right, I'm gonna actually mute myself, but I'm gonna keep myself on screen. Wait, as I get this set up here. There we go. And like I said, I'm gonna keep myself on screen, but I'm gonna mute myself because I want you to see this in real time as I did. And I want to then I'm
court will now have the clerk read the verdict.
State of North Dakota, in District Court, County of Ward, North Central Judicial District. State of North Dakota plaintiff versus Nicole Aaron Rice, defendant. Criminal number 51 2022 CR 00421. Verdict form. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn, find the defendant Nicole Aaron Rice not guilty of information dated at Grand Forks, North Dakota, this 26th day of March.
Now really, what was that for? What really was that for? Is there no such thing as courtroom decorum anymore? Normally, when a verdict is being rendered, a judge worth his or her salt will tell everybody in that gallery that he nor she wants to hear any kind of outburst as the verdict is being read. What you just saw was a total lack of courtroom decorum. They're cheering as if somebody just got the number one draft pick in the NFL or NBA draft. Meanwhile, there's a family about to do a life sentence without their daughter. So what's the cheering for? Who in their right mind would cheer just because you've been found not guilty of felony murder? If anything, number one, I'd be keeping my mouth shut. If this were me, I'd be keeping my mouth shut and thanking the good Lord above that I was found not guilty of felony murder. And at the same time, with my family behind me, cheering, again, like somebody that's got the number one pick in the NBA or NFL draft. Are you kidding me? In a courtroom? That's lack of decorum for the court, and that's lack of respect for yourself and the family of the victim. And that's why I'm shooting from the hip on this one. Normally judges already nips this thing in the bud before the verdict is read. This one, I'm not so sure he did that. Actually, I can go ahead and say with certainty he didn't do that, or else we would not have heard all that cheering and shouting that occurred in that courtroom. There are some things sacred. Courtroom decorum during a rendering of the verdict should be one of those things. Just saying. That's all I got for this week's edition of Bethea'S Byte Reloaded. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to let you know how you can get a hold of me, and if you want to shoot, I just shot from the hip. If you want to shoot back, you can hit me up on Facebook at Bethea'S Byte Reloaded, on X at EKB316 in all caps, here on YouTube at Bethea'S Byte Reloaded, on Instagram at EKB316 in all lowercase, on TikTok, where I will link this video as well. That'll be at King of Hearts 316 2021 while we still have it. And you can email me. I would love to hear what you got to say there. The address is kingofhearts316_09 at outlook.com. If you liked everything you saw and heard today, hey, and you want to if you want to support me for Freeway, no problem. I appreciate that love. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment. That's the free way to support the channel. If you would love to support me monetarily, I'll help. That helps me too. This keeps this thing running. On PayPal at EKB316 or Cash App $EKB316. Nothing is obligated, but it's always appreciated. Alright, let's wrap this thing up in a bow. This is your home for true crime news without the drama, where your opinions matter, where lively debates are encouraged, where your voice is heard, and above all else, it's justice served. And I guarantee, no gimmicks, no drama, no BS. This is Bethea'S Byte, and it's reloaded. I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. Thank you all so much for joining me. Let's do this again and soon, alright? Until then, you all know what to do. Bite this.
Thanks for watching and joining me here at the drama-free true crime destination. Be sure to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and drop me a comment on this video. Also, be sure to follow Bethea'S Byte Reloaded all over social media. This is Bethea'S Byte, and it's reloaded.